Have you ever experienced anything that fell outside the realm of normal scientific knowledge? Something paranormal? Get ready for 3 creepy paranormal short stories that push the boundaries of reality, just like these people experienced. Welcome, fellow chill seekers, to Lady Grimm, where the veil between our world and the unknown grows thin. Welcome to Lady Grimm, where the paranormal comes alive. The Carnivore. A few years ago, I was driving to a friend's baby shower outside of Anchorage, past Palmer. It was evening when I left her house to start the 40-ish mile drive back to Anchorage. By the time I reached the Old Glen Highway Bridge that crossed the Matanuska River, it was almost full dark. There's a turn there where you can pull off, park, and watch the river from a walking footbridge. It had become my tradition to stop there whenever I went up to visit my friend. The air was crisp that night, and the river was flowing, free of ice. On evenings like this, it was exhilarating to stand at the center of that footbridge, listening to the black water rushing below as the moon rose overhead. I parked and hopped out to stretch, glad for the break. Looking across towards the opposite side, I found myself alone as I approached the footbridge. There weren't any hikers in sight, and the parking area was deserted. The thought crossed my mind that it was a bit late for a stop, but it was a tradition, and I'd be quick. When I reached the center of the bridge, I closed my eyes, listening to the roaring waters beneath me, and felt the cool summer air against my face. When I opened my eyes, I caught movement at the end of the bridge. Someone was standing at the entrance of the bridge about 20 feet from my car. For a moment, I thought it was a bear. We have plenty of those here, and I watched it now, standing perfectly still, holding my breath. But it was so dark, I couldn't tell what I was looking at. It crouched down like a bear might, but it didn't move. I waited for a long moment, slowly reaching for the K-bar knife on my belt. I pulled it from its sheath and held it at my side. Whatever it wasn't moving. It was waiting. I had 3 options. I could go past it and get to my car. I could cross the bridge at the other side and then walk back along the highway to my car, but there was no guarantee it wouldn't get between me and my car again. And finally, I could wait for it to leave, but if it started chasing me, I'd be unprepared, and that's never ideal. I decided to walk past it. With my knife in hand, I pulled my shoulders back and started towards my car. As I got closer, the figure raised its head enough for me to see the whites of its eyes in the moonlight, but nothing more. It was a man wearing a long black cloak with a hood, crouched low to the ground. With its head upturned in the hood, he was scenting the air. He was poised, like he was ready to run. If I could reach the end of this bridge, I knew I could get to my car. As I passed the crouched figure, his head raised higher, and I saw pale, sallow white skin under the cloak above his black eyes. Those eyes were tracking me, and I felt like I was walking into a trap. His head lifted far into his cloak, revealing his mouth, and he raised his hands and licked his fingers, Something dark was on each finger, but I couldn't tell what it was. His mouth was turned into a smile, and I cringed, turning towards my car, breaking into a run. I heard him spring from his crouched position towards me, but I was fast. I reached my car and flung my door open, looking back towards the bridge. But he was gone. As I peeled out of the parking space, I almost hit a pickup truck that had pulled up behind me. The driver waved me down, and I saw it was a state trooper. She said she'd decided to check the parking lot for bear after almost running over a mangled deer at the turnoff. I asked her how she knew it was a bear. "Oh, you can tell. It's been ripped to shreds. Definitely a hungry bear. It's odd that it left the deer out there in the road, though. Something must have spooked it. Or maybe it got on the trail of something else to hunt." The trailer. My husband Shane and I live on a private rural road in West Virginia. We're about 45 minutes from town, and getting to our house requires a few turns on rural roads off the highway. You need a reason to come here, and when friends visited, they called first. But it's been a while since we've had visitors. We bought the house dirt cheap at auction about 6 months ago after the former owner passed away. We wanted more space to work on our small business, and the house seemed perfect. We weren't superstitious then, but now we know our house is haunted. When I say the house was perfect, I meant we hoped it would eventually be perfect. When you buy a house at auction, it comes as is, meaning whatever junk is in it is yours. The former owner had been a hoarder. The house was full of stuff. Nothing of value, just junk we had to take to the dump. We even tried putting some of it out on the turnoff to our road with a big free sign, but nobody picked it up, which we found strange. By a month after we moved in, every room had been emptied and cleared out, including the 2 outbuildings, a barn, and a long standalone storage trailer. The trailer was the last area we tackled. It was piled high with boxes and farm tools, except for a small walkway that was covered by a dirty blanket, hung on a rod with shower hooks. Behind it, we found a door with a lock that led to an empty room. The room was spotless and had no windows. We had to use our phone lights to see it, as the only light in the trailer came from the door at the opposite end. The back room was completely empty of junk and even smelled of bleach. It made no sense to us, and we tried to laugh it off at the time. We converted the barn into a wood shop where my husband works most evenings making signs and cutting boards for our online store. On very hot days, he waits until the sun goes down to start working out there because it's not air-conditioned. He opens the big barn doors which face the back of our house for better airflow in the shop. We don't close the blinds on the windows until bedtime because we're so far out of town there's no worry about people looking in after dark. One night, about a month after we moved in, as Shane worked in the shop, he looked up at the house to see me in the living room, packing orders with my back to the kitchen, which is the other room at the back of the house. As he watched, a man closed the blinds in the kitchen. I was alone in the house. He had run through the back door and immediately searched the house, scaring me. When he found nothing, he told me what he saw. I hadn't heard or seen anything. I started feeling uneasy in the house after that night. At first, I thought it was in my head and tried to ignore the feeling. There were small things like feeling watched, the doors closing on their own. I started hearing someone walking in the house behind me, and then turn around and there was nobody there. It didn't change the fact that I could feel someone was there. like they were just out of sight watching me. It was so unnerving. And these things seemed to only happen when I was alone, never when Shane was in the house. I had a small vegetable garden I'd started and kept my tools in the creepy storage trailer. There was no power in the trailer, and you had to leave the door propped open for light. Every time I was in there, I just had this urgent feeling of needing to leave. It was almost like a panic. A week after the incident with the blinds, I was in the shed to gather my tools and propped a sturdy shovel in the doorway to keep the door from closing. With my back turned, I saw the light behind me disappear and the door shut hard. I told myself to calm down. It was just a breeze or the shovel had slipped. I felt around the trailer and reached the door. I turned the doorknob, knowing in seconds I'd be outside because the door had not been locked. Except it wouldn't turn. It wouldn't open. I turned the knob violently in the darkness, willing it to budge as my panic rose. The trailer was pitch black except for a small amount of light that seeped in from under the door. I felt for my phone in my back pocket and used the screen light to check the doorknob. It wouldn't open, which made no sense. I dialed Shane, and just as he answered, I turned and hit my elbow, fumbling my phone, dropping it face down. A small outline of screen light framed my upside-down phone, and as I bent to reach for it, I heard Shane answer. But then there was another sound behind me. I heard the door to the back room slowly creak open. Panic hit me like a tidal wave, my heart galloping in my chest. I paused to listen more clearly, and there was silence behind me. I reasoned that I was just imagining things. By now, my phone had gone dark, but I could still hear Shane's voice coming through it. I searched for my phone and the familiar sound of his voice in the darkness, sliding my hands against the trailer floor. Then another sound pierced the darkness. A blanket hanging from the shower hooks was sliding slowly on the rod, like whoever was there was taking their time. I was trapped in the trailer with something or someone that was getting closer in the darkness. I was in the trailer. The trailer! Were the only words I could say as something yanked tightly on my hair, ripping me backwards. Like a rag doll, I slid helplessly backwards, gasping for air against this powerful, silent force. There had been no rush of footsteps, no breathing, no words, no warning to let me know something was close enough to grab me in the darkness, violently yanking me backwards. As I grabbed upwards at the force pulling me, my hands caught only air. I was being dragged back and sideways, smashing against the trailer wall like a thing, not a person. I kicked hard at the wall, trying desperately to get a toehold to anchor myself, but I couldn't. The grip tightened, and I felt myself being dragged deeper into the darkness of the trailer, towards the back room. All at once, I was blinded by the light of the opening trailer door. My hair suddenly freed, and I dropped to the floor, gasping for air. Shane had heard me and had come running. I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't. He searched the trailer, but found nobody. That day, we called a medium, and I explained what had happened. She cautioned us to stay away from the trailer, and we made an appointment for her to investigate the property and hopefully cleanse it. When I told her the address, she went silent. That's when she sighed and said we lived in the old Fayette place. She told me the Fayette family runs the town out here, and that our property had been owned by one of the Fayette grandkids, the black sheep of the family, who had been suspected of torturing and killing women. He was never convicted or even arrested, and the cases were labeled unsolved. Quietly, she said she suspected the family slaughtered their black sheep to make their issue go away. He was found dead with a female victim in the back trailer on the property. The same trailer that I had been attacked in, and that had been bleached clean when we bought it. Thanks for being here with me and listening to these stories. If you're enjoying them, please subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know you're out there. I appreciate it. The Lost. You need to know I have a horrible sense of direction. Even when it seems impossible to get lost, I'll make it happen. Blame it on having learned how to navigate in the city using GPS, but my sense of direction in the country is awful. I was driving to see my cousin in Tennessee and somehow got lost after exiting the highway. Everything looked the same to me, and my GPS wasn't getting a signal. I tried calling my cousin, but again, no service. The woods were thick, and the road curved around large, ancient trees. The houses were getting farther and farther apart as I made more distance from the highway. I passed the Laurel Hill Wildlife Management Area, so at least I had a landmark to use. I had to pee pretty badly and decided to pull over and find a tree along the side of the road I could go behind. I turned the headlights off, just in case someone drove past me while I was going. I was grateful that there were at least some occasional cars on the road, so I didn't feel quite so alone. I walked back towards the warm glow of my taillights, considering how to retrace my steps back to the highway where I had a better chance of getting a phone signal. As I reached for the door distractedly, I saw the faces of a young woman and a little boy looking up at me from the back seat of my car. They were pale and had dark, empty eyes. I jumped back, and as I did, a truck rounded the corner and blared its horn at me, nearly missing me in the road. I was so startled, I barely noticed the truck's jake brake bringing the truck to a complete stop. I was staring at my car, which was now empty. I was so shaken, I couldn't even move. It was the trucker's voice that brought me back to attention. He asked if I needed a ride. I could barely speak, but shook my head no. That should have been enough, but he was insistent. I said no several times, and when he finally reached for me, I slid away from his grasp and got into my car, locking the door. He looked at me blankly for a minute, then turned and went back to his truck. I watched as his taillights disappeared from view, and I steadied my hands on the wheel for a few more seconds. I drove in the opposite direction for a few miles, just trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. Turning on the radio, I felt a jolt as the DJ mentioned the suspected involvement of a trucker in the unsolved murder of a young woman and her son whose bodies had been found in the Laurel Hill Wildlife Management Area. Had they been trying to warn me?